Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulih Nabil Amin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa atba'ihi ajma'in. So, I wish to commence today, inshallah, by doing a quick recap of what we had discussed last week. And inshallah, we'll continue from that point, inshallah. So, firstly, what we discussed was that the 10th of Muharram enjoys significance prior to the martyrdom of Sayyiduna Husayn radiyallahu anh, and it enjoys importance, and we fast on the 10th of Muharram not because of the martyrdom of Sayyiduna Husayn radiyallahu anh, but because Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam fasted on that day, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam fasted, as he mentioned in the hadith, that because of the exodus of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, when Nabi Musa alayhi salam had crossed the sea and he had been saved from the tyrant Fir'aun. That was the first aspect that we discussed. The second aspect was the concept of the Ahlul Bayt, the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And amongst the many virtues of the Ahlul Bayt is that they are mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. Simply, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that He has forgiven the sins of the Ahlul Bayt, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected them from any form of deviation or leaving the fold of Islam. So that is a guarantee that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives for the Ahlul Bayt, the direct family members of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, who are the Ahlul Bayt? Number one we mentioned was the noble wives of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Each one of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam fall under the Ahlul Bayt, as we understand from the purport of this ayah. The first part of the ayah, Allah says, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing the noble wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they fall under the Ahlul Bayt. This guarantee that they are cleansed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also is related to them. The second category of people who fall under the Ahlul Bayt is the wider household family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We said Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's great grandfather was Hashim, so the Banu Hashim. His son was Abdul Muttalib, right? His one son was Abdul Muttalib's son was Abdullah, the father of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Talib, the father of Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu anh. Hamza radiyallahu anh, who was martyred on the plains of Uhud. Sayyidina Abbas radiyallahu anh, whose son was Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anh. Zubair had actually passed away prior to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam becoming a Nabi of Allah, and then was Abu Lahab, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about in the Quran, Tabbat yada Abi Lahabi wa tab, that he was one of the main enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had caused much harm to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that is the second category of the Ahlul Bayt, the family and household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then from the Ahlul Bayt, we have the concept of the Sadat. The Sadat are the Sayyids, the direct descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, as we discussed last week, that the person who is from the direct descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not something ordinary. He actually contains the blood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is something very special. And when a person has Iman, he has Islamic knowledge, and that coupled with that, he now has he's from the lineage of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is something that is really special for that person, and we've seen it in certain individuals where they really stand out, they really shine, and you can see that this is because they're from the lineage of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had three sons. He had three sons. One was Qasim, and the second was Abdullah. These both were from Sayyidah Khadija radiyallahu anha. Qasim and Abdullah had both passed away in infancy, and then was Ibrahim. Ibrahim was from a slave, Maria Qibtiyya radiyallahu anha. All three had passed away in infancy, and this was from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that nobody will claim that that these sons of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are next in line for the aspect of prophethood. But Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had four daughters. Right, so Sayyidah Ruqayya and Sayyidah Kulthum radiyallahu anhuma had married Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu. Right, they do not have descendants, they do not have children, and so there's no descendants remaining today linked to Sayyidah Ruqayya and Sayyidah Kulthum radiyallahu anha. Sayyidah Fatima radiyallahu anha was the last and the youngest daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was very special to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, this last Juma, I wanted to talk about the relationships between the Ahlul Bayt, the very wholesome relationships. Inshallah, sometime in the future, we look at that. I didn't really have adequate time to prepare for that, so I had discussed something else. Anyway, so Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha, there was a beautiful relationship that she had with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, says that Fatima radiallahu anha was a carbon copy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She walked like Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Her demeanor was like that of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would visit Fatima radiallahu anha, she would stand up, she would approach Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, make salam with him, kiss him on his hand, and then usher Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam to a place of seating right next to hers in a comfortable, the most honorable place in her home. When Fatima radiallahu anha would visit Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would do exactly the same: stand up, kiss her on her hand, and make her sit right next to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On one occasion, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Fatima radiallahu anha is seated next to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam whispers something to her. She begins to tear. She begins to tear, and thereafter he whispers something else to her, and she begins to laugh. Aisha radiallahu anha immediately seizes this opportunity. Oh Fatima, what did Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam tell you? She says there was a reason why Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it secretly. I'm not going to divulge this. It was a communication between father and daughter. There's a reason why he did not mention it to you. Later, after Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha again asked Fatima radiallahu anha, and then she explained that what actually happened at that time was Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told me that every Ramadan, Jibreel alayhi salam does a revision of Quran with me once. This last Ramadan he did it twice, which is an indication that my time to leave this world is very close. So that made me emotional, and I began to tear. Then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told me that, oh Fatima, you're going to be the first to meet me. 4 to 6 months after that, Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha passed away, and so that's what made her very joyous, made her happy that she's going to be meeting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned regarding Fatima radiallahu anha, Sayyidatu Nisa'i Ahli Jannah, that she's the leader of the women of Jannah. So she is the queen of Jannah. Now, what's important is Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam I don't want to lengthen this discussion much, right? There's just so much to talk about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Fatima radiallahu anha. But what's unique here, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't say you are the leader of the women in this world of Jannah. So in this world you live in ordinary life. In Jannah, that's where you will be special. In this world you live like everybody else. In fact, when slaves were being distributed, Fatima radiallahu anha asked Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam for slaves. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not give her. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually, the slaves were being distributed. Fatima radiallahu anha goes to the home of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not at home. She mentions her dilemma to Aisha radiallahu anha that her hands are becoming rough with the manual work that she's involved in. She had to grind the grain and to make the bread. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam later comes to the home of Fatima radiallahu anha. She's seated on her seating on her bed with Ali radiallahu anha. Fatima radiallahu Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam sits between the two of them, and then he advises that recite Subhanallah 33 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, Allahu Akbar 34 times after every salah. So he did not give a slave, but he gave her a wazifa, which will grant her that place in Jannah. So that was, I think that is how when a person wants his daughter to be the princess that we talk about, this is the way. Make a sacrifice in this world, she'll be the princess in Akhirah. So anyway, so that was Fatima radiallahu anha. She was very special. Her two sons was Hassan and Husayn radiallahu anhuma. Regarding Hassan and Husayn, there's so many ahadith. Amongst the ahadith is a hadith where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Sayyida Shabab Ahli Jannah, that the two of them will be the leaders of the youth of Jannah. They will be the leaders of the youth of Jannah. So that is Hassan and Husayn radiallahu anhuma. There's so many ahadith where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was on the mimbar and he embraced them. Or Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered into the masjid while carrying them on his shoulders, one on the one shoulder and other on the other shoulder, and he entered into the masjid and led the noble Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Then there was another, okay, this is Fatima radiallahu anha. There was another grandchild of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this was the daughter of Sayyida Zainab radiallahu anha, Sayyida Umama radiallahu anha. So Umama bint Abil As, right? Or Sayyida Umama bint Zainab radiallahu anhuma. Sayyida Zainab radiallahu anha had this child from Abu al-As bin Rabi', who was not yet a Muslim at that time. So she had actually got married before the prophethood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At first he did not embrace Islam. Later he embraced Islam. Sayyidah Zainab radiallahu anha was, while she was trying to migrate to Al-Madinah Munawwara, she was stabbed. That child was lost, and even shortly after that she had actually passed away. So she passed away. Umama's radiallahu anha's father also passed away. Then she was with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She spent much time with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, just as there are ahadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam carrying Hassan and Husayn radiallahu anhuma, there are ahadith that narrate how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered into the masjid carrying Sayyidah Umama radiallahu anha. There's one beautiful narration where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam received a necklace made of a very valuable stone, and he said, I'm going to give this to somebody I really love. Ahabbu nas ilayya, the most beloved to me. So all the wives of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam were there. So it also was a bit of a tense moment. Who's going to be this most beloved? Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam calls for Sayyidah Umama radiallahu anha, his young daughter, granddaughter, who's playing around, and he gives us the story to Umama radiallahu anha. So that was how special Sayyidah Umama radiallahu anha was. Now, who did she get married to? She got married to Sayyiduna Ali radiallahu anha. When Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha was ill and she knew that she's going to leave this world, she advised Ali radiallahu anha that if you are going to get married, then you should get married to, I advise you to get married to my niece Umama radiallahu anha. So she gets married to Umama radiallahu anha, he gets married to Umama radiallahu anha, and from there they have a son, Muhammad, who they regard as Muhammad al-Awsat, the middle Muhammad. So so that was the children of or the progeny of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just something interesting is Rasulullah Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh was interested in getting married to the daughter of Abu Jahl, was a Muslimah, right? And At the same time, when she was married to Fatima radiallahu anha, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no way. The Nabi of Allah's daughter and Adu Allah's daughter, the enemy of Allah's daughter, can't be in the same marriage together. So yes, you can get married to a second wife, but not Abu Jahl's daughter. Anyway, so that was the lineage of, or the progeny of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then we spoke about the noble Sahaba radiallahu anhum, that whilst we have love for the Ahlul Bayt, we don't ever compromise our love and our reverence for the noble Sahaba radiallahu anhum. When Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah, Allah fi ashabi, that fear Allah regarding my companions. فَمَنْ أَحَبَّهُمْ فَبِحُبِّي أَحَبَّهُمْ وَمَنْ أَبْغَضَهُمْ فَبِبُغْضِي أَبْغَضَهُمْ. Those who love them because of my love for me. Those who hate them is because of the hatred for me. وَمَنْ آذَاهُمْ فَقَدْ آذَانِي. Those who harm them are harming me. وَمَنْ آذَانِي فَقَدْ آذَى اللَّهِ. And that person who harms me is trying to harm Allah. وَمَنْ آذَى اللَّهِ فَيُوشِكُ وَإِيَّاخُذَهُ. And that person who tries to harm Allah is going to be taken to task very soon. So another hadith, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if you are in a conversation with somebody who is who's talking ill about the Sahaba, فَقُولُوا لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى شَرِّكُمْ. Then take such a stance and say, may the curse of Allah be upon your evil. So we don't compromise in terms of when it comes to a person who speaks ill of the noble Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Okay, so that is what we had spoken about, right? Before we go any further, two important conversations and two important aspects need to take place. Number one is, what was the status of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu? Did they commit any sins, including the Ahlul Bayt, the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The Aqidah, the belief of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, is that the Sahaba were mahfuz but not ma'soom. They were mahfuz but not ma'soom. What is ma'soom? Isma is for the Anbiya. A Nabi of Allah did not commit any sins. No Nabi of Allah committed a sin. Right? Perhaps certain misjudgments took place, or certain, on the day of Qiyamah, certain Anbiya will believe that they committed sins, but it was not actually sins. So no Nabi of Allah committed a sin. Sahaba could have committed sins. They're not ma'soom. They could have made mistakes, but they generally mahfuz, protected from Allah, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The greater, or the lowest Sahabi, our belief is that the lowest Sahabi, his status is far greater than the most pious person ever, besides the Anbiya. So the lowest Sahabi is the highest, is higher than the most pious person that we know, or the most pious of scholars from the Tabi'een and Tabu'ut Tabi'een also. And so they could have they could have had misjudgments, they could have made mistakes, but they were generally protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is why even when it comes to their mistakes, there's absolutely no benefit in us speaking ill about them, because we think about that hadith, Allah fi ashabi, that fear Allah regarding my companions. The second aspect to note is related to the concept of ijtihad. So when we look at the whole incident of Karbala, we look at the battle of Siffin, we look at the incident of Jamal, all of these incidents, there were two parties of Sahaba. What happens? One would have been right, one would have been wrong. So what's the situation there? We understand that this concept of ijtihad. Ijtihad, they were people who were rightful to actually derive laws from the Quran and Sunnah. So they were rightful people to make judgments at that time. Yes, the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam explains that when a person, a qadi, makes a judgment, who is knowledgeable, who is rightful to make the judgment, if he is right, he gets 2 rewards. If he is incorrect, he gets 1 reward. So that is our belief regarding the Sahaba. Yes, there were perhaps mistakes that were made, and yes, ulama, we'll go into some incidents inshallah, perhaps the ulama have actually written, like ulama such as Ibn Kathir rahimahullah, people who of substance, people who have great knowledge, they actually had taken certain views that in this instance Muawiyah radiallahu anhu was right, or Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu was better in the situation, but both of them made ijtihad. So we don't say they were wrong, or they were sinful, or they were oppressors, or they were off the track. No, their judgment was based on the understanding what they learned from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the third aspect, before we go into anything else, is when it comes to narrating of historic narrations. Now, Ibn Sirin rahimahullah mentioned something very interesting. He says, Al-Isnadu min ad-din. The concept of a chain of narrators is part of deen. لولا الإسناد لقال من شاء ما شاء. If it wasn't for isnad, the chain of narrators, anybody would have said what they wanted to say. Right? So Islam it's not based on just hearsay. We have to have that chain of narrators. When it came to Quran is mutawatir. There's absolutely no doubt in the chain. When it comes to ahadith, then a hadith will only accept it, especially in terms of aqidah and in terms of fiqh rulings, if the chain has no issues to it. It's absolutely authentic hadith. When it comes to historic narrations, then we don't derive laws from there. We don't derive our Islamic fiqh, aqidah from there. So ulama haven't given so much importance to the chain. If the chain has some issues, it's still accepted. So that is why now, in historic narrations, we'll find some varying narratives related to the same thing. And so that's a possibility. Then we also found from with the emergence of the Shia, which happened later, they now fabricate things right to the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right. So up to this point, the Shia were not in existence, but they now fabricate things from before their existence also. Right. So that was that. Now let's go on to what happens now. Right. What was the backdrop behind the incident of Karbala? Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anh takes the reins of Khilafah after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passes away. There was consensus among Sahaba. They all understood that Abu Bakr radiyallahu anh is the next Khalifa, no doubt. Abu Bakr radiyallahu anh, before he leaves this world, he appoints Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anh. Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anh leads with justice until finally one morning at Fajr Salah, he is stabbed. And he understands that he's about to leave this world. He appoints a 6-man committee and he says, within the next 3 days after I pass away, you need to appoint the next Khalifa. And they appoint Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anh. Right. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anh, now a very soft temperament individual, a very loving person, a very extremely generous. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anh is leading. And now there is now a rebellion that commences during the latter part of Uthman radiallahu anh's Khilafah. What is this rebellion? There are people from the areas of Egypt who were unhappy, and there were people of the areas of Kufa who were unhappy. They were unhappy with certain smaller issues. They were unhappy with the governors. They brought this up with Uthman radiallahu anh. Eventually, what they do is a large army or a large group of people leave Egypt, and as they continuing, they getting support from others, because now they talking to others that our governor is like this, and our governor is not distributing wealth equally, and we are still in poverty, and whilst others are wealthy. And any person whose focus is on wealth, he will resonate with us now. So they gaining support. The people of Kufa join, and now there's about 10,000 people who approach Uthman radiallahu anh. Right, so they approach Uthman radiallahu anh. He appoints Ali radiallahu anh to go into conversation with him. Whatever they wanted, he agreed, even though at times they were unjustly and incorrectly demanding. So, like, one of the biggest things was that they wanted equal or a better distribution of wealth. What did that mean? We want more. So Ali radiallahu anh said, okay, that's for you. Conversations were finished, and now suddenly they about to leave. The next morning, and they see a horseman running. This horseman is running. They say this is a suspicious horseman. They stop him. What do you have? He says, I am a messenger from Uthman to the governor of Egypt. And what's the letter? That, oh governor, when these people come, you kill them, you imprison them, you do whatever you want to do to them, torture them, and get rid of them. Now, there's a few opinions. None of our Sunni Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, ulama of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, believe that it was written by Uthman radiallahu anh. There's a view that it was by Marwan bin Hakam, but that also is we wouldn't accept that also, because Marwan bin Hakam, an interesting thing is he comes in the Umayyad dynasty. He's one of the Khalifas for one of the Sultans, at least for about 2 years. He was a child, about 6-7 years old, when Fathu Makkah took place. So he was a child of a child Sahabi, at least. Obviously, he didn't narrate anything from Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, Imam Bukhari also narrates a hadith that has Marwan in the chain. So I mean, if Imam Bukhari makes tasheeh of him or makes regards him as thiqa, he was a special person. So anyway, so there's one view that he was the treasurer or the katib, the writer, and like the secretary of Uthman radiallahu anh. So he perhaps wrote this letter just to kill this rebellion, and it's not from Uthman radiallahu anh. But that's all. It's difficult to believe that. It was forged by one of these people who were rebelling. Those who didn't want the outcome to be good, they actually wanted to rebel, and they were perhaps the munafiqun, hypocrites amongst the rebels. So okay, so that was so when they read this letter, now there's now an uproar. And what do they do now? They march towards Medina Munawwara, they surround the house of Uthman radiallahu anh, and their focus is on killing Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anh. Eventually they kill Uthman radiallahu anh. Uthman radiallahu anh was a remarkable person. The house of Uthman radiallahu anh was surrounded. He knew that he's going to be passing away. Some Sahaba such as Ali radiallahu anh, sons of Ali radiallahu anh, they all there ready to protect. Can we just put this on here? They're all ready to protect Uthman radiallahu anh, but Uthman radiallahu anh says that no, I will never accept that for my sake a sword is thrown for another Muslim. They even actually asked that, oh Amirul Mu'mineen, they leading the salah, should we perform salah behind them? He says yes, they Muslims, perform salah behind them. So that was remarkable. But so this was the birth of the Khawarij. Birth of the Khawarij. Khawarij we later see in the time of Ali radiallahu anh. Perhaps we'll look at that perhaps tonight or another night, inshallah. Now what happens now? Ali radiallahu anh takes over after Uthman radiallahu anh is martyred. Uthman radiallahu anh was reciting Quran, and his blood spills onto the ayah of Quran, فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ, that Allah will be sufficient for you in terms of these people. Amazing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had played out this entire situation for us to benefit from. Anyway, so now Ali radiallahu anh takes over. As Ali radiallahu anh takes over, there's now a concern in Al-Madinah Munawwara that these rebels are still around us. These rebels haven't left for Kufa and for Egypt, and some were around from the region as well. They're still in Al-Madinah Munawwara. We may never be able to figure out who were the actual killers, because they came out of the house of Uthman radiallahu anh and they were into the crowd. Nobody knew who actually killed Uthman radiallahu anh. So we can't take them to task. But actually the rebels, if we don't execute them or actually at least expel them, do something to them. Ali radiallahu anh says, listen, I want to understand the office first. I can't do anything immediately. So they say, okay, we'll give you time. 1 week passes, 2 weeks passes, 2 months pass by, and they keep on coming. Talha radiallahu anh, Zubayr radiallahu anh, oh Amirul Mu'mineen, we need to do something. People are becoming agitated. We need to sort these rebels out. We don't want this situation to continue, that continuously we have killings happening here. So eventually Sayyidina Zubayr radiallahu anh and Talha radiallahu anhuma, they now getting tired, and there's pressure on them now. So what do? They now go to Makkah Mukarramah. They go to Makkah Mukarramah where Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha was, because she had performed Hajj. Uthman radiallahu anh passed away. I think the advice was, the advice to the wives of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you just stay in Makkah. Things are not settled in Medina. You just relax in Makkah. So they come to Makkah. They come to discuss with Aisha radiallahu anha that, oh Mu'mineen, what do you have to say about this? Aisha radiallahu anha is in support. Yes, we need to take them to task. Ali radiallahu anha is delaying you in this situation. So what do? They now march from there with a large group of people, and they move towards Basra. They move towards Basra. Now, on the way, they reach Basra, and now Ali radiallahu anh realizes that this is now something of concern. So what does he do? Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh now, he goes with his group of people, and they now also meet them in Basra. There they go into some conversations. Talha and Zubayr radiallahu anhum are talking to Ali radiallahu anh that this is our concern. We are now here to show you that, listen, this is a big concern. See the amount of people who are supporting. These are the people that are concerned. It wasn't just us. We were talking on behalf of a large group of people. So do you understand the magnanimity of this issue here? That how we need to sort them out. And you're delaying too long. A few months, now it's already 4 months later, and we just won't be able to sort out the issue, and we'll just find more and more issues. So they come to amicable agreement. We don't have exact details to what was the agreement, but they come to an agreement. So perhaps Ali radiallahu anh is conscientized on the importance of this issue at that point, and they go to rest in their own camps that night. Some of the rebels within the camps there, they not happy with us. The hypocrites, those who wish to create problems, 1,000 of them, the narrations explain, going to the camp of Ali radiallahu anh, 1,000 going to the camp of Aisha radiallahu anha with Zubayr and Talha radiallahu anhum. And what do? They start attacking one another. So now it seems like both camps are attacking one another, and there's just chaos, and there's just confusion there. Narrations explain that Zubayr radiallahu anh is running around, Talha radiallahu anh is running around there, trying to understand what's happening and trying to stop the people. They just stop this. There's no need for this war. There's no need for any altercations. We had our discussions yesterday. Everything is fine. But they cause this. Generations explain that up to about 20,000, 10 to 20,000 Sahaba were made shaheed in that situation. Sayyid passed away. Even Talha and Zubayr radiallahu anhuma also become shaheed. So that was the battle of Jamal. Why is it called Jamal? Because Sayyid Aisha radiallahu anha was on her camel, and as long as she was on her camel, the followers of Aisha radiallahu anha, they understood that she's up there. That means continue. Until some Sahaba had to actually cut the legs of the camel of Aisha radiallahu anha till it fell down, so that now they understood that she's no longer instructing from the top. So that was the Battle of Jamal. There's many more discussions that we can have related to that. Our focus is Karbala, which is a very far distance, when we're taking very long to reach our destination. But okay, then now Jamal takes place. Now Ali radiallahu anh is facing another issue. What's the next issue? Battle of Siffin. Battle of Siffin. Muawiyah radiallahu anh was a governor of Damascus, based in Damascus, the governor of the area of Sham. A very successful governor. He governed the region for 20 years. He later becomes the Khalifa after Ali, then Hassan radiallahu anhuma, and then Muawiyah radiallahu anh takes over. He was a remarkable person. He was a wonderful leader. So Muawiyah radiallahu anh is there. He did not pledge his allegiance, and he tells Ali, until you don't take the killers of Uthman radiallahu anh to task, I am not pledging my allegiance upon you. So this is a sort of rebellion against the Khalifa, which is the major issue. So Ali radiallahu anh now marches towards it. In fact, before Battle of Jamal, Ali radiallahu anh was actually heading towards Siffin. He was heading towards Damascus to meet Muawiyah radiallahu anh to sort that issue out, and then he sees, hey, Aisha and Talha and Zubayr are here. So he diverts and he gets there first. Now he's on his way to Muawiyah radiallahu anh. Negotiations commence, but there's no resolution found. So at the Battle of Jamal, that battle that took place, or the killings that took place, was all accidental. It was an intentional war. This is now the negotiations are unsuccessful, and a full-blown war takes place. This is one of the saddest moments in our early history of Islam, where two groups of Sahaba are intentionally going at one another. There's a narration that suggests that up to 60,000 Sahaba were made shaheed. Up to 60,000 Sahaba were made shaheed at the Battle of Siffin. Until finally, the followers of Muawiyah radiallahu anh, they put the Quran from their swords and they pick it up. Is an indication that let's decide by the Quran. So they set for more negotiations, and eventually they decide, listen, this war is going nowhere. None of us are going to pull back, but we're just losing noble people here. So eventually now they say, okay, like we'll have further conversations in the future. And no further conversations actually happened. So Muawiyah radiallahu anh, until the demise of Ali radiallahu anh, did not pledge allegiance on his hand. And Ali radiallahu anh now gets too occupied with the Khawarij. Were the Khawarij? Khawarij were those who supported Ali radiallahu anh initially. So we said they commenced already at that time. Already at the time when they had taken siege of the home of Uthman radiallahu anh. So who were these people? These were not Sahaba. These were people who had loved, or he had seen Sahaba, right? And they had become, in inverted commas, super pious. So Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anh says that I have never seen a group of people worship Allah more than the Khawarij. So they were not per se evil. But Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that they are the most evil of people. Who are these? So what happens? They thought they were most pious in the Sahaba radiallahu anhu. And they felt rightful to kill Uthman radiallahu anhu. Now here what happens is now they become this extremely pious, everything being haram, nobody not tolerant to any other view held by anybody else. An example of that in our modern times that we had recently seen was the emergence of ISIS, where a noble goal, but at the expense of everything else. A noble goal at the expense of everything else. Then that anybody who disagreed with them, he's rendered a kafir, and then his blood becomes halal. So yeah, so that actually comes up in every era. We find whenever there is an improvement in a community, then the elements of the Kharijiyah does raise its head, and Allah Ta'ala protect us all. Okay, so now maybe if I take off this. Okay, no, leave it, it's fine. What I think instead. So now what happens now? So Ali radiallahu anh, eventually they were supporting him, then they turned against him, and Ali radiallahu anh is killed. Right. As Ali radiallahu anh, after he is made shaheed, what does he do now? Or what happens now is Hassan radiallahu anh takes the role of Khalifa, his son. Whereas Muawiyah radiallahu anh, before this, he just didn't pledge his allegiance on Ali radiallahu anh. Now he says, I'm rightful of Khalifa. Because you understand there's no way here, I fought a battle with his father, what's going to happen now? So he claims he's the Khalifa, and then after 6 months, Sayyidina Hassan radiallahu anh, he hands over the Khilafah to Sayyiduna Muawiyah radiallahu anh. One day Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was on the mimbar. Hassan radiallahu anh, a young boy, is there, and he says that this young son of mine is a Sayyid, he's a master, he's a leader. He's got leadership qualities in him that hopefully he will reconcile by means of him two groups of the Muslims. The two groups, major groups of the Muslims, will reconcile by means of this young boy, Hassan radiallahu anh. So it was an amazing action of his, and this was a real maturity and emotional intelligence, that this man did not accept my father. This man was ready to kill, his army was ready to kill my father. But he hands over the Khilafah to Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, understanding that he is from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. So he hands over the Khilafah to Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Now this commences the Umayyad dynasty. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu leads with justice. He's a remarkable leader, and he basically sets the foundation of the Umayyad dynasty, which then Islam spreads during the Umayyad dynasty from areas of It goes right into Pakistan, into the Indo-Pak subcontinent. It goes into North Africa and right into Spain, where Islam during the progress that we seen in Spain was during the Umayyad dynasty. Right. So he was a remarkable person. Now, when he's about to leave this world, he has he finds himself in a situation. What do I do? Are we going to go back to the system of the Khulafa Rashidin, where certain people will choose it's not my son, but it's whoever's the most noble? Yeah, that will bring about a lot of conflict, because even though everybody is settled at the moment, there's still some conflict and there's still some tensions, that I'm a supporter of Muawiyah and I'm a supporter of Ali, and all of the discussions are still there. So what do I do now? So Muawiyah radiallahu anh, now he discusses with certain Sahaba and eventually appoints his son Yazid to be the next Khalifa. Amongst those who he discusses with is Sayyiduna Husayn radiallahu anh, Sayyiduna Abdullah bin Zubayr. Both of them are dead against it. You cannot appoint your son. Don't start this monarchy system from so early. But Muawiyah radiallahu anh discusses with other Sahaba and he says, that Yazid may not be the most rightful. There may be people more rightful, but in my situation, or the current situation, he is the best suited for that position, so that calm can still continue. Right. So who was Yazid? An alcoholic, a womanizer, an evil leader. That's the one version. Obviously, there's a version that the Shia would love, that he was a terrible person. Right? The second version is that he was a wonderful person. He's the son of a Sahabi. He spent time with Sahaba. He actually narrated a hadith as well. He formally studied. So he's a wonderful person. Musab can tell us about Mufti Radha, his view on that. He inclines more to this here, right? But the general view amongst our ulama is that he was a leader like other leaders. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, we won't criticize him. Perhaps he made mistakes, but it was ijtihad. Yazid is now, we don't look at Muawiyah radiallahu anhu or make judgments on Muawiyah radiallahu anhu the way we make on Yazid. Yazid was a leader like other leaders. He did some wonderful things. He did some good things. He tried to do good things also, and he made mistakes. We look at some mistakes where he doesn't really take the killers of Husayn radiallahu anhu to task. That's one of his biggest crimes that is mentioned by our ulama. Okay, so Yazid takes over, right? Before his father Muawiyah radiallahu anhu passes away, he advises him that do this here. There will be people who will not accept your khilafah. Do not fight them. Do not show aggression towards them. Talk to them and convince them and prove to them that you are a rightful leader. So what does he do? First thing he does is he becomes Khalifa. He sends a letter. Okay, this before we go there. So we say Husayn radiallahu anh is one significant person we look at. Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anh, and the other is Abdullah bin Umar. Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anh, despite his father being the Khalifa, Umar radiallahu anh, he disassociates himself from politics. He becomes apolitical. I'm just involved in knowledge and in worshipping Allah Ta'ala. Right? So what happens now? Yazid sends a letter to Walid bin Utbah. Walid bin Utbah is the governor of Medina Munawwara. He sends a letter to Walid bin Utbah. You go personally visit Husayn and Abdullah bin Zubayr and you tell them that I'm the new Khalifa. My father has appointed me, but I am going to prove myself. I'm not going to be a liability to the Ummah. I'm going to be a positive to the Ummah. So they say, okay, we need some time to think about it. Right? We need some time to think about it. The next morning, they leave. They leave Medina Munawwara and they go to Makkah. As they arrive in Makkah, Husayn radiallahu anh receives letter after letter. So historic narration suggests up thousands of letters he received from the people of Kufa. Now let's remember, the people of Kufa were the people who initially supported Ali radiallahu anh. Later they were the cause for Ali radiallahu anh's martyrdom. Right? So he's receiving letter after letter after letter. So he's very confused now in that situation. What happens? Sayyiduna Abdullah bin Umar was apolitical. He tells him that, listen, the people of Kufa are evil people. They're filled with evil. You just stay away from them. Don't accept anything from them. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas Radhiyallahu anhu says that, oh, my cousin, if it wasn't against our dignity as Ahlul Bayt, I would have held you on your hair and kept you here in Makkah. I wouldn't allow you to go to Kufa. So just don't go to Kufa. So what does Yazid do? What does Husayn radiallahu anhu do? He sends his cousin Muslim bin Aqil. He says, Muslim, you go to Kufa and just find out, let's check out what's happening. Muslim bin Aqil goes, and 12,000 people rally around Muslim bin Aqil. We are ready to support Husayn radiallahu anhu, tell him to come through. Narrations explain that later up to 30,000 people supported Muslim bin Aqil. Right. So he sends a letter now to Makkah Mukarramah. Husayn radiallahu anhu, things look wonderful. You come this way. People are going to support you. Meanwhile, what happens now? Yazid finds out that, okay, Muslim bin Aqil is there. There's a rebellion starting. He is now thinking about Siffin. He's thinking about Jamal. So what is he? He is now getting upset with Nu'man bin Bashir radiallahu anhu. Nu'man bin Bashir was the governor of Kufa. Nu'man bin Bashir wasn't being hard on this rebellion. He didn't sort Muslim bin Aqil out. Obviously, he was taking into consideration sentiments here. And this is the grandson of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I saw Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam showing love to Husayn radiallahu anhu. Yeah, how can I now stand in this situation? So Nu'man bin Bashir is being a bit passive. He's not being so aggressive in stopping this rebellion. So this is Yazid is not happy with this. Yazid sends a man by the name of Ubaidullah bin Ziyad to Kufa. They tell Nu'man bin Bashir, he's down, you are now in as a new Khalifa. Ubaidullah bin Ziyad is described as a ruthless person, full of tyranny, who wanted to show his muscle. So he wanted to show his strength. That was Ubaidullah bin Ziyad's way. Now this is an issue. What happens now? Ubaidullah bin Ziyad, he enters into Kufa with his face covered. As he enters into Kufa with his face covered, the people all say Ya Sibta Nabi, Ya, oh grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ya Husayn. People are rejoicing that Husayn radiallahu anhu has entered. Ubaidullah bin Ziyad understands, okay, there's an issue here. People are ready for Husayn. I need to sort the situation out right now. What does he do? He calls all the ring leaders, all leaders of tribes, and he executes all of them. As he executes all of them, this sends shock waves of fear throughout Kufa. Shock waves of fear throughout Kufa. And then after he kills them, he sends spies to look for Muslim bin Aqil. Muslim bin Aqil was the cousin of Husayn radiallahu anhu when they first. He got that first supporters of 12,000, and later it became 30,000 people. Right? Muslim bin Aqil takes refuge in the house of Hani. And then after he goes away, once Ubaidullah bin Ziyad finds out that he was in the home of Hani, he captures Hani. But then Hani had a good support from his tribe. Those people all protest, and Hani is freed. Now, why we mention about Hani, we'll see him later where he changes his colors. He is in support of Muslim bin Aqil. Later, because of the pressure, he joins the army of Ubaidullah bin Ziyad and Yazid. So anyway, so Muslim now gathers support. Muslim bin Aqil, he understands, okay, now I need to get my support. I had that 30,000 people. So what happens now? He goes to look for his 30,000 people, and 4,000 people come. Only 4,000 people come, right? That 4,000 people are now, he marches with them towards the governor's palace, towards Ubaidullah bin Ziyad's palace. And they are there outside the palace, and now it was the morning. By the while they camped outside the palace, Ubaidullah bin Ziyad sends people to infiltrate in that army, to bribe and to threaten. So they obviously bribed with large amounts of wealth, and they had given certain threats to the people who were there. So obviously, like, I know where your father is staying. I'm going to hurt your father. I'm going to hurt your mother. I'm going to hurt your family members if you don't leave this army. By Zohr time, there were 70 people. Later, more so from 4,000, 70 people. Later, more people leave the the camp of Muslim bin Aqil, and eventually Muslim bin Aqil by that night he's sitting alone. He's one man alone. He goes to the he's looking for some support, and he goes to a house of a lady. He knocks at the door. That lady opens up. She feeds him. She gives him a place to stay for that night. And Muslim Aqil is resting. Later that night, this lady's son comes and asks that, "Oh, my mother, who's this man who is resting in our house?" And she explains that he said his name is Muslim bin Aqil. So the son says, "Listen, we've got a problem. If Ubaidullah bin Ziyad is to find out, we're in a problem. And number two, if we are going to hand over Muslim bin Aqil to Ubaidullah bin Ziyad, there's a big reward for that." So he goes to hand over Muslim bin Aqil to Ubaidullah bin Ziyad. Ubaidullah bin Ziyad is taken onto a tower and he's thrown off. He becomes shaheed. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Before he goes, he sends a letter to Husayn Radhiyallahu an. Husayn Radhiyallahu an receives the letter. Where does he receive it? About 70 kilometers from the city of Kufa, or 100 kilometers from Baghdad, at a place called Karbala. So he is at Karbala, he receives this letter. At Karbala now, they're in a discussion, what do we do? Before they can do anything else, there's an army of 1,000 people. Here, Husayn Radhiyallahu an was about around 145 individuals, not just ordinary individuals, but noblemen. They were from the family, from the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were even the children, young children of Husayn Radhiyallahu an that were with them, and now they are stopped by a man by the name of Umar bin Sa'ad. Umar bin Sa'ad, he approaches Husayn Radhiyallahu an, that Ubaidullah bin Ziyad has sent us, that you are rebelling, we need to sort you out. Husayn Radhiyallahu an says, okay, I put forward 3 options to you, right? I don't want to cause a war here. First option is, let me return to Medina. Number 2, if you don't want me to go to Medina, let me go to the boundaries of the Islamic Khilafah. That's where obviously there is never stability there, so I can't cause any problems from the boundaries of the Islamic Khilafah. So let me just go sit there. Or number 3, if you're not happy with that, I'll go from here, I'll go straight to Damascus, and I'm going to meet Yazid. So Umar bin Sa'ad sends a message now to Ubaidullah bin Ziyad. That's what's your verdict on this? Narration suggests that Ubaidullah bin Ziyad was still deliberating, what do we do? Perhaps we let him go to Yazid and talk to Yazid. And one of his men around him, Shimr bin Abi Jawshan, he says, listen here, you don't mess with this man. He's going to come back stronger than ever. Sort him out right now. Tell him he needs to come right here to you, Ubaidullah bin Ziyad, and pledge allegiance upon you. So Ubaidullah bin Ziyad says, okay, that makes sense. So you go, Shimr. So Ubaidullah bin Ziyad was a ruthless man. Shimr is his friend who's exactly the same as him, who's ruthless, who's ready for war. And so what happens? Shimr now leaves from the governor's palace, and he comes to Karbala with another 2,000 people. So 3,000 people, and they're standing in front of Husayn Radhiyallahu anhu. Oh Husayn, there's only one option. You go to Yazid, or you go to Ubaidullah bin Ziyad, you pledge your allegiance, otherwise there's war. We are 3,000, you are 145. And so this is then how the battle ensues. And I think I've taken a lot of your time already. Inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow discussing the details at what actually took place on the battlefield at Karbala. And then we'll discuss also, inshallah, in next week's session, what happened the next year with a man by the name of Mukhtar, where he actually avenges the death of Sayyidina Husayn Radhiyallahu anhu. But what does that actually lead up to? Inshallah, we'll discuss that next week. Sorry, I took up so much of your time. This was a whole hour. What time did you start? Yeah. So yeah, no, I not only has it taken a lot of time, it's my content has also come to an end. I have to read up more, inshallah. But that will be certain for next week, inshallah. Yeah. And is any comments or anything on this?
Imam Husayn was martyred on that battle at 145 versus the 3000.
At
So
Karbala.
that order was given by Yazid.
Okay, we look at that. What was the actual stance of Yazid? Basically, Yazid wasn't happy that Husayn Radhiyallahu was killed. But he didn't take anybody to task. So that's why there's conflicting views and different ways of looking at it. Some would use it that okay, he was a good person, so that's why he was unhappy. He did want Sayyid Radhiyallahu to be killed. And then we can also say, because he didn't take anybody to task, that despite he did not giving the instruction, it served his cause. It served his cause of sorting out the rebellion. So yeah, reading into history can just be seen in any way. And I think they say that what we learn from history, one of the biggest lessons we learn from history is that nobody learns from history. So perhaps one of the lessons that we can learn is that I think we need to really document our history. Document our history we never know how many years left of the world also, but yeah, at least the next generations can understand where we came from. Like especially like in our communities, what I believe we are emerging community. Where did we start? What was the dynamics in the start of our community? I think it would be beneficial for the next generations. So inshallah, we'll continue from here.
Next week.
Inshallah, next week will be our last segment. Inshallah, it won't be so long because it's just the battle, and then we talk about what happens a year later, which is the start of Shiism. بارك الله فيكم سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت